as an exploration of, to me, the most fundamental of inquiries on the spiritual path, which is it possible to reside in a place of the deepest acceptance of our experience, of ourselves primarily, because our experience is born of ourselves, and all we really have is our experience. Is it possible to without forcing ourselves, without agitating the self, to arrive at a place of the deepest acceptance of what is in our experience, of what was in our experience, what might be or will be in our experience, and to what aim, what for, why. So what I've been contemplating, I think, this morning, without any particular preparation, is that on this spiritual path, particularly on the non-dual path, but on all of these contemporary spiritual quests, we come with a deluge of answers. We want answers. We want answers. We want answers. You may be in the vain hope that one of these answers is going to solve the riddle, solve the puzzle, get us to the destination that is brings us to either the acceptance or the peacefulness or the solution or awakening, whatever we might have in mind or in our longing. And there's nothing wrong with that search. This is not a case of judging some things as good and some things as not good. That's not what I'm proposing, and that's not what I'm here for at all. But in my experience, the answer is not found on the linearity of the endlessness of the I that searches for the answers. That seems to be stuck in much more of a horizontal understanding of the human experience, because so conditioned are we to the rational, so conditioned are we to the logical, to the linear, to the mathematical almost way of thinking, that we have a tendency to apply that logicality or that rationality to the spiritual search itself, meaning that we start at a certain place and we puzzle, and then we start on this search and we look for answers, and that one answer satisfies and another answer doesn't satisfy, but one answer will lead us to another question. We might be temporarily satisfied with the answer that we get, but before long the itch arises and we move on to the next question, to the next book, to the next teacher, to the next inquiry, to the next even contemplation. And this is a very much a part of the human journey, the human experience, the human questing, as somebody called it, which is beautiful. Has its, we are questers, we are journeyers, we are seekers, we are searchers. It's that grit that drives us. But there's a danger of just, of keeping it somehow on the linearity. My own experience and the experience with Amoda, my wife, who you obviously know, I hope you know, is that meanwhile, while this is taking place, the real The real transformation happens on the vertical plane. The vertical plane is what happens when we go like this. The vertical plane is what happens when we somehow, through grace, through willingness, through persistence, through determination, through, you know, whatever it is that takes us there, however life rolls out for us individually, find ourselves in a place where it's the deeper and deeper and deeper experience of the answers that we get, or the questions that we have, that actually takes us into the heart, into the deepest, into the place where on the egoic level we don't want to go. It's an inwards mechanism, and I'm sure you know this, and I'm sure you know you're familiar with this. Obviously, if you're on a path of exploration, you're not just dallying on the surface, but, you know, my intention as I'm realizing it is to somehow keep drawing us back, keep drawing us back into diving in, because there's no limit to how deep we can dive in. There's no limit to how far down we're going to go. It's not like the linearity of the A equals B and then there's a consequence. We dive in deeper and deeper. I'm not talking about going higher and higher, although it's the same thing. We're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper through the mental body, through the emotional body, through the stuckness, even of the, you know, what we call the physical body, into deeper and deeper and deeper realms within ourselves, ever more subtle realms. It's the subtleness. It gets subtle. Subtle is to the ego mind, the subtle is not relevant. I want the gross. I want the boomph. I want the slam dunk. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the subtleties, the fineries, the deepest. In the subtleties is the truth. In the subtleties, we go in and in and in like fine pieces of kind of thread until we arrive where? Where are we going to arrive? There is no destination. We're born of the eternal. We're made of vibration and light and some biology. We fix ourselves because we're all egomaniacs, not because we're insane, but because we are insane, because we've become convinced that we're solid. Ask any quantum physicist, quantum scientist, just how solid we are. We'll find that we're not solid. So as we go in, even if we're inquiring on any level, the inquiry takes us to emptiness. On any level that we move in and in and in, the inquiry takes us to space. And within that space, or as that space, as that beingness, as that consciousness, so we may arrive at a deeper acceptance. Because what's to accept? The human condition? Manifestation? On the level of going deeper and deeper and deeper, all is, in effect, all is as it is. I've seen the pattern once or twice in my life where I've become so still, so deep, so high, so so empty, so unrooted in self, that actually the acceptance was that it is a pattern, that everything is patterning from nothingness into somethingness, and then back to nothingness. And we arise as the individuations out of the nothingness, as a blip, as the tiniest little blip in eternity, like a flower, or like a tree, or like a breath, or like a cloud, or like a universe, or like a thought, and we disappear back. While we're here, are we any different? Well, yes, I am Kavi. I am different. I have form. I have my life. I have my woes. I have my troubles. I have my conditioning. I have my dense feelings. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. We have the issue of survivalism. I have to. But on closer inquiry, the I that seems so solid, the I that we pledge our allegiance to and serve unconsciously, really, as conditioning takes hold of us, we pledge our allegiance unconsciously to the self and to the self of the world. We pledge our allegiance to an illusion. We pledge our allegiance to a fiction. And this is not to decry it. This is just to remember, to remind us, even on this, Monday here, don't give too much away. We give too much away in our allegiance to the self. And then what are we, we're stuck in the self. It's like a prison. And we look for ways out of it through in all sorts of different ways in our lives. On the unconscious level, we might look through addiction, or through depression, or through gaining more of something, or entering the matrix on the level of trying to find something through acquisition. But we're still given our allegiance to this self, and collective and individual self, without without a second thought. And then that doesn't serve us anymore. And for millions now, it doesn't serve. Millions. There is a mass movement. I don't mean the woke people. I mean people who are on a sincere path of trying to unravel, trying to make sense of the human experience. So it's my purpose, my duty on a certain level, to kind of say, no, not so much allegiance to the self, because the self is ultimately is the important word, is an important word. Ultimately, it's an illusion. A very persistent one, a very pretty good one. Takes us on a merry ride, and it doesn't want to yield its power. So we kind of get left. But there's a whole different devotion. Allegiance is something, in a way, we give to this self. And I like to talk about devotion to the unknown, devotion to beingness, devotion to a deeper acceptance than the ego self understands. It can't get its head around it. It's contractual. It wants to make a contract of acceptance, like it wants to make a contract of so many of these deepest, more subtle, spiritual, existential, true values. They can't be traded. They're all consuming. They're all or nothing. Deepest acceptance is all or nothing. And that doesn't mean to say a rigidity. We have a rigidity to it. In fact, rigidity is part of the contractual self. There is no rigidity. The fragrance of the places that I'm referring to are all steeped in this, very soft, tender, kind, open, allowing kind of place. It doesn't make us weak or anything, because they're just ideas of the self that wants to say, no, we've got to work at this, Kavi. We've got to work at this. This is see, my own journey that seemed to begin, in earnest in the early 1990s, that actually in retrospect had begun when I arrived in this incarnation, as I'm sure it did for you. It's like, wow, I've always been on a spiritual journey. So is everybody else. You just don't realize it. But the journey in earnest started in 94, 95, when I stumbled, or was invited through grace and despite my resistance, into a shamanic camp, 2 years with a wild, ruthless, kind of merciless, incredibly deep shamanic kind of teacher in England, on the borders of England and Wales, who was steeped in Nisargadatta, Rumi, American Indian, and Irish folklore, kind of all the old stories. And he was a warrior in so many ways, every way. Well, he destroyed me over a period of 2 years. I mean, literally, he destroyed everybody, but I put myself in the firing line, and through ceremonies, through inquiry, through stories, through just a continual bathing. That's why it's so important for me, I think, to bring it forward in these times of Zoom meetings and us all doing, lots of different things. There was an endless bathing in the fragrance through, I was there physically, but this was like profound and set me on a course, that was just relentless in its destructive quality. And I mean that in a good way, because it was just destroying and bringing to the light and dissolving everything that was not somehow essential. I didn't know at the time. I was just being destroyed. And then I left that place, and then it eventually, or the next phase of the journey, in a sense, led me to into Amoda's orbit, and love, essentially, to the doorway of love. And I think the reason that I'm saying that is because the inevitability of the journey brought me to the door of acceptance. It didn't start out at the door of acceptance. And of course, I met that inquiry, met that possibility time and time again, but it's taken so long for the fruit to ripen, even as much as it is now, into the path, the experience of the deepest, of a deeper and deeper and deeper destinationless acceptance of the horror of the world, with all its insults, with the past, the way my past was, with all of the stuff that goes on in our world, some of which can be done something about and some of which can't be done. But essentially the nature of human beings emerging and going back into dust, what can we do about some of those things? Apart from, on the ego level, resignation or war, and on the deepest level, acceptance. I'm a work in progress in that sense, because I don't believe there's a destination for the deepest acceptance, but there's a willingness to keep on opening, to keep on being willing